Hey old guys, we're back with another video, and fun and games are about over here. I've got to get from Angel Fire back to Los Alamos again for another week or so of adventure up there. So I thought I would do a quick video on this guitar, which I mentioned the other day in a video I just finished. And this is a HD-28 LSV. They call it an HD, right? Yeah. HD-28 LSV. Large sound hole, vintage neck. What this is kind of a copy of a Tony Rice guitar, more or less. It's not a very good copy, but it's kind of a nod that direction. I say it's not a very good copy of Tony's actual guitar because, the woods are all wrong, constructions are wrong. But it's got a large sound hole on it, and it's got a really nice 1 3/4 inch neck. So, as with all of these guitars, you really got to let it stand on its own and forget the fact that it's a copy of a 30s D28 or it's a copy of Tony's guitar or it's a copy of this guitar, that guitar, that kind of thing. So they're good guitars. I really like these LSVs. This is the first one I've seen in quite a while. This has what's called the Smokies Red Spruce top, and this is a red spruce top that was salvaged. I was going to say harvested, but it's not right. It was salvaged by John Arnold back when this happened. I'm going to turn this light off here because it's reflecting on the guitar, and I don't think we need it now. There we go. It helps a little bit, but the reflection of the guitar is distracting. Most of the people that use these round lights probably don't have shiny guitars reflecting back at them. So anyway, so it's a red spruce top, but it's a particular kind of red spruce top, being that it comes from the 4 trees, I believe, that fell in the Great Smokies Mountains during a hurricane. And John Arnold and Ted Davis were able to harvest 4 of those trees and use them for guitar tops. My understanding of this is that they ended up using, most of the wood came from 2. And John, being the one that cut the wood up, can tell you which tree it came from and where it came from on the tree by the rings and the things like that. They have a characteristic stripe and things like that. After you've seen enough of them, you can recognize it as a Smokies top. So they're kind of special, because there was, I don't remember how many, 400, something like that, tops that they got out of that tree. And unfortunately, the National Park Service, I think the reason they harvested these trees, or salvaged these trees, is because they fell on a road. And if I recall, a lot of trees are falling out in the woods, and they can't go harvest them, okay? My memory's fuzzy on this, but I know there's a lot of Smokies tops laying on the ground out there that they can't salvage because of that. So I'm sure somebody's going to correct me on that, but that's my memory on this. Is that these trees were able to be salvaged because they were across the road, so they had to be moved, and there we go. So, anyway, this is a Smokies Red Spruce top. The tree is estimated to be 400 years old, so that's kind of cool, that it made its way into this guitar. All right, so what's interesting about this guitar is that this is one of the Martins that I have talked about before that does not need a neck reset. So I've been looking at a lot of authentics lately, and like every authentic that comes through here needs a neck reset. Well, first of all, I remember I get sick guitars. I'm hospital. So I get guitars that are sick. Guitars that are good and in good health and all that, I never see them. So for instance, pre-war Martin, I'm not sure, pre-war brand guitars, I've never seen one because nobody sends me one. They must not need any work. I've seen one Ken Hooper guitar, and that's because he handed it to me. He said, "Here, check this out." And I've never seen one in the shop. I guess they don't need any work, So remember, I have a very biased sample of guitars here. I have sick guitars, or I have guitars that people want hot rodded. And sometimes those guitars aren't sick, but I'm going to be doing stuff to them. So my point of all this being point of all this being, there's been a lot of authentics here that have needed neck resets, and that's not necessarily indicative of the authentics as a whole, okay? This guitar has the exact opposite problem, and I've mentioned that when I was talking about authentics. This one has a very low action, which right now is about 84 thousandths of an inch. I normally like 93 is a low action. This one is 84 thousandths of an inch. It has a very tall saddle right now. That's not very tall. It's at the limits of being very tall. You can see it right there. This saddle is 1/60 thousandths of an inch out of the bridge. And in my other videos, I said, that's it. That's the limit. I won't go any taller than that, especially on a vintage type bridge with the saddle as long. That's a steep saddle. In fact, when this came in, it was even lower actually. It was 70 thousandths of an inch at the 12th. That's lower than I run my electric guitars. I run all my electric guitars here at about 85 thousandths of an inch on the low E. So that's what this is right now. This is the same action as my Telecaster and the Strat and the Les Paul over here. Same action as those. I can't go any higher. The saddle's tall. I'm not going any higher than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this guitar be a low action, slinky guitar. And over time, 20, 30 years, whatever, it's going to distort. Things are going to happen to it. It's eventually going to need a neck reset where the action went up. But in this case, it'll probably never need a neck reset. You'll probably just keep filing the saddle down. And in maybe 10, 20 years, the saddle's going to be down to where perfect, where it ought to be. So, but right now, it's a tall saddle and a very, very low action. So I've got the opposite problem of all those authentics that we've been looking at. And this is the way that a lot of the golden era D18, the GE D18, which I love, and the Marquis D28s, and the LSVs. There's a period about the 2000s, the year 2000s, when this is what I saw typically. It was very tall saddles, very low actions. And like I've said before, there's nothing I can do here. The only thing that I could do would be to do a reverse neck reset and take a little bit off the top of the neck here to bring the neck angle up. And that's it's not tricky, but it's a lot harder than just doing a regular neck reset. So when you have a guitar that, like on most of those authentics, I needed to drop the heel by 10 thousandths of an inch. That's a very minor neck reset. I normally am doing about 30 thousandths of an inch with a typical 70s neck reset. So 10 thousandths is like a very minimal neck reset, but it's needed if you want the guitar perfect. It's a lot easier to do that, a real neck reset, than it is to do a reverse neck reset. I could do a reverse neck reset on this, but my inclination is to not. Owner's got a lot of guitars. He doesn't need this one to be a high action. If he does, he's got, there's other guitars that we could use for that. And this has a big neck. So, having that reach and having a low action on this big neck makes it really comfortable. Okay, so things that I did to this guitar. Owner wanted me to change the tuners out, and these are the Clusson tuners. And I disagreed. I said, just leave them alone, because Waverleys are not really going to work any better, and these are light tuners, and the footprint of these Clussons bites into the wood, and the Waverleys will not quite cover that footprint. I used to use these Clusson tuners all the time. I had a 1992 Collings Clarence White with Brazilian Adirondack, which, that's a Tony Rice copy guitar. It's still not a very good Tony Rice copy guitar, but that is a top of the line Collings guitar. The wood was supplied by John Holman, Brazilian rosewood, spruce top. All that wood was supplied by John Holman for Collings to build those guitars. They were the pinnacle. And in 1992, they used Clisson tuners. So, there's nothing really wrong with these tuners. They're good tuners. They're easy to replace if they ever do fail, and sometimes they get a little wobbly after 20 years, 30 years. They're still available, so just pop one out and put a new one in, So I talked him out of it. Leave it alone. Save those Waverleys for something else. It's not going to improve this guitar, really. These are lightweight tuners, and to me, that's the whole point of replacing like Grover Rotomatics. We're trying to get the weight off the headstock, and these are good. So we left them alone. And again, it's not like this is his only guitar. So we're not trying to make this. If it was your only guitar, you'd go all out on it, And then you might put Waverleys. Like me personally, I'd still leave these Clissons in there. I like them. I like the oval buttons. They're good. I don't sit here playing with my tuners, I get in tune, I'm done. So, all right. I adjusted the nut. Nut was very good. I made very minimal adjustments on this. It seems like the nut slots were better back at the time of this guitar. So I made very minimal adjustment on this one. Nothing like the Authentics. This is very minimal. The neck is already flat. I didn't do anything to that. The relief is nice and flat. Perfect there. Nothing to do. I took the popsicle brace out. And in the process of doing that, I used a heat pad, which I haven't done in a long time. I've been using the heat pad a little bit on 70s because to see if I can master it. And the problem with using the heat blanket, it's a heat blanket. You put it in here and you set the timer and you set the heat. The problem with that is you just don't have the control over the heat. When it gets hot, you get a blister in the finish. And with all the popsicle braces, I've chipped them out. Scraped them out, and it's not as pretty because it's just not as pretty. There'll be little remnants of glue, and sometimes you get a little bit of chip of wood or something like that. You go patch it up. But I've been trying to get that heat blanket technique mastered to see if it's worth going back to. I used to do it that way, and I got a bubble one time in a collector's guitar. I got a little heat bubble in there, and the very next guitar he sent me was a Sunburst. Oh, God, it was a D45 Deluxe. So it was a Sunburst D45 Brazilian Rosewood conversion. It was like, there's no way in the world I'm going to risk bubbling the finish on this thing. So that's when I chipped it out. And I said, that's not bad. Okay, point is, I used the heat blanket on this. I got a little bit of a bubble. It's not a bubble, actually. It's just kind of a scuff right here. And I'm going to come in here in a little bit and buff it out again and make it disappear. You might see it reflected in. Let's see if we get a reflection in there. Right there. See that? Looks like a little scuff. And it's not a bubble. It's just a scuffing in there. I had a pad pushing down on it, but the trouble is you're heating spruce. When I heat up the bridge plate down here, it's a different kind of wood. It's rosewood against spruce. They heat differently. The rosewood holds the heat. The rosewood is almost like a heat sink, I think. And it doesn't transfer as much. But when you're heating spruce and spruce, it just is not working very good. I don't think I'm going to use the heat blanket anymore. You try to find the right heat temperature and the right amount of time, and you go 5 seconds too long, and you get a scuffing like this. So I'm going to buff that out, take care of it. Anyway, pulled the popsicle brace out. We replaced the pickguard. It has a reddish pickguard, and it's funny because somebody in the comments, this guitar briefly appeared in a video, and someone said, "Ooh, look at that lovely pickguard." Well, we didn't like it. We replaced it with a dark one, which I like. On Tony Rice's actual guitar, I like the looks of the Rattlesnake album with dark pickguard. I don't really like the tortoiseshell pickguard. I just don't. It's distracting to me. On my Collings Clarence White, it had a Dalmatian pickguard, and it just is so ugly to me. I replaced it with a dark one, so I like the dark pickguard, I pulled the bridge off and scraped all the finish out underneath it. There was probably 1/4 of an inch of finish through here. I've talked about that. I have a whole video on this about scraping that finish out. But during this time period, Martin would cut a very small footprint for the bridge and glue the bridge to that so that the bridge is actually sitting on top of the finish. Glue doesn't stick to finish. It's not. And then you got a gap. So you got the finish here. You got the wood of the top down here because the finish is sitting on top of it. And then you got the bridge on top of that. So however thick the finish is means that glue is going to fill that gap. Not a very good way to do it. So what I do, in my humble opinion, I know why they do it, because it looks pretty, because the finish goes underneath there and there's no witness line. So if you look at this one very carefully, you can see like a little bit of a glue line shining at you, you know? And people don't like that. They say, it looks sloppy. Well, you know, that's the way the old guitars were. So scraped the finish off, glued it back down nice and solid. I think I might have used fish glue on this. I can't remember right now. Just as a test. No, that was somebody else's guitar. I don't remember. Maybe I used fish glue on this. Anyway. Alright. Then I put a new saddle on it. And the new saddle is 20 thousandths of an inch taller across the board than the old one. So it runs just about 160 thousandths of an inch sticking up out of the bridge, and that's as tall as I'm going to go. That's already tall. The break angle is so steep, could be so steep on the low E right here, that I didn't use a slotted pin on here. I took one of the non-slotted pins and I cut a slot in it to offer some relief for the low E string up at the top, so I didn't have to cut the slot so deep. That keeps the break angle more like about a 45-degree angle. If you have the strings coming up out of the bridge like this, and then the saddle is right here, if you have a 45-degree angle, you're going to balance out your forward push versus your downward push. If you go too shallow like this, you're going to have all downward push, but you're not going to have much forward push, and it's going to slide over the top like this. So, in other words, this is your saddle, this is your string. If it was flat on the top, you know, you can see it would just slide over because it wouldn't have any bite. 45 degrees is the mechanically optimal angle between slide and push. If you get too steep, coming down to here, you're going to see what's going to happen is the force of that string is going to be all against the saddle. It's going to make that saddle really lean forward. It's going to push this way rather than pushing down on it. So if you have too steep of a string angle on that low E, it's going to want to push that saddle forward, and that's going to cause trouble. So optimally, you want a 45-degree angle. Anything less than that, your force should start going more this way, and anything this way, it's going to be a little bit more down pressure, but the string's going to start sliding off the top. So in order to keep it about 45 degrees, I slotted the top, just the top of the low E pin. So the string goes into that slot and then goes into the slider bridge as normal. What I did. Alright. The X braces on the HD are just like all the other HDs. They start. Here's your X brace. The scalloping starts about 1.5 inches back from the X brace. So I've got a whole video on this. It's called Finishing the Scallop. Your X brace is here. The scalloping starts about 1.5 inches back from the X and then scallops out. What that does is it does strengthen this little area right here, but because the scallop starts back here, it creates a stress riser right behind the bridge. And a lot of times you will get a belly. It's better, in my humble opinion and experience, to start the scallop right at the X brace and bring it back gradually, and that distributes the stresses more evenly across the top right here. I've actually reduced some of these big humpy bridges, or big humpy tops, where they have a big belly back there. I've actually reduced those on HD-28s by finishing the scallop, and it makes the whole top rise in a smoother angle. So that's going to give the guitar a little bit more bass and a little bit more response, because you've lightened the top a little bit. I did that on this guitar, finished the scalp. I shaved the 2 rear back braces. I've got a video on that too, shaving the rear back braces. The reason for that is because that's the way the old guitars were. And in the mid-90s, Martin went to these all tall back braces. And you lose this variable sound here. So that deeper tone that's right in here. It's vibrating. If all your back braces are the same, you end up with very even tone and you lose some of the complexity of tone. The guitar doesn't kick you in the ribs. It just doesn't seem as loud. So I shaved that down. That's really my standard modern Martin guitar mods. Popsicle brace, back braces. If it's an HD-28 and the customer wants me to, I will finish the scallop up. If the bridge is sitting on top of the finish like this, I like to pull the bridge, take the finish off, glue it back down all to the wood, clean it all up, stick it to the wood the way it's supposed to be. Okay? Let's play it. Okay? 1 3/4 inch neck, 2 5/16 inch bridge spacing, and right now it has ebony pins, which it came with stock black plastic, and I'm out of a lot of my pins, so I just have ebony pins in here with abalone dots, and this one here is the original plastic pin for right now, so won't make much of a difference. So got 80-20 strings. I don't even know what kind they are. It's what came on the guitar. They feel almost like elixirs. They feel a little bit slick. They might be elixirs. They don't feel sticky to me. They're not grabbing my finger. I don't know what they are. They're still in good shape. They don't have dents in them, so I will shut up and play the guitar. My impressions, guitar sounds great, plays great, sounds great, got a nice balance to it, a lot of bass, powerful guitar, action's nice and comfortable, super easy to play, super easy to yeah, nice. I can overplay it and make it buzz, you know. Yeah, but in your normal playing. Plays good. Okay, I better check the tuning, and I'm going to play something else. It's just getting sounds just a little. All right. Quick word on capos. Had a question about on capos. What kind of capo was I using on that? I was using a D'Addario NS. This used to be the Ned Steinberger, and before that it was a Victor capo. These are good capos. The main reason I use them is because when I'm comparing different guitars here, I can reach over and grab this capo and I can slap it on the neck here. And the thumb screw is really nice and adjustable. It's quick. It's a pretty decent capo. It doesn't weigh a lot. Clamps down there and I can vary the pressure, which is nice when I have these different size necks. That's a good capo. That's not my favorite capo though, but it's really good for this demonstration stuff. Another capo I use fairly often is your standard shub capo, and it's the same sort of thing. It goes on here. What I don't like so much about this one is I have to adjust it backwards for each neck. So in other words, I have to loosen the screw up, and then I have to test the fit. And I said, no, that's a little too much. No, that's a little too little. And I got to go kind of back and forth till I find, and it takes 3 or 4 times to get the pressure right for this neck. With the NS, I don't have to do that. It's a forward adjustment, meaning I'm putting the capo on and I'm adjusting it right there and I'm done. You see? The shub, I got to adjust it, clamp it. No, that's wrong. This one just goes right on and adjusts. So I like that better than the shub. I used shubs for a long time, but my favorite capo is a gate capo like this one. This is a Page, and they're no big deal. By gate capo, it opens here. The reason I don't use this so much on these demo guitars is because I got to take it off, put it on, and it's just another 2 seconds worth of time, But this is what I use personally because I leave it on the nut, you see. And another reason I have to take it off, I don't want to bang the customer's nut up there, So let's put this one on here because it happened to be on this guitar. I thought I would talk about it. It's a forward adjusting capo. You put it on, you adjust it, you get the tightness where you want it, which is not too much tightness. You want to put them right behind the fret with just a little bit of clearance, about like that. You don't want to go too much on the away from the fret because then you're pulling the string down into the middle, you'll pull that out of tune. If you get too close to the fret, sometimes you don't get enough bite. It has to match that fingerboard curve exactly. So you get just a little bit of flexibility if you back off of that fret just a little bit. So that's what we did here. And I like these the best. They're adjustable. They're what Tony Rice uses. And I have two. I have 2 Elliots, a push button and a gate, and those live in the Prue guitars. That's it. They live in those cases. They never come out. They don't get used on here. I don't want to lose them. They're both engraved with my name. They're fancier capos. They're a little bit nicer than these Pages, but these Pages are $15 or something. I've got one in all the other cases. I've got 6 or 7 or 8 of these things. I don't know how many of them. And I like the Pages a lot. I don't think functionally they're any different from the Elliott. The Elliots are really nice capos. I mean, they're handmade. There's something to be said about that, But these Pages are good capos. So let's play this tune. I haven't played this in forever. And it's just something I was messing around with the other day. To recall how it goes again. So here we go. I'm talking to you. It's easy, you know, but it's got such a cool feel to it. So, all right, let's see how this like Sautel, and then we'll get out of here. I like these LSVs. Be fun to try one of these in Guatemalan, Madagascar rosewood. I'd get my attention. I appreciate the wider spacing doing that kind of thing. It just really gets your hands loosened up, moving. Lots of room for your fingers in there. I do like that. So, this is a great guitar. Yeah, I would love to see. I mean, the Indian rosewood is good. I would love to see one of these in a Madagascar, Guatemalan rosewood. What's the other hot rose? There's a hot rosewood, you know. I've seen one, I think, in Brazilian, but it wasn't very impressive because Martin didn't use the best Brazilian on it. And personally, I like Madagascar rosewood a little bit better for my personal sound. You know, when you get to the older guitars, I do like, okay, this is a Brazilian rosewood guitar. But in my personal sound, I like Madagascar a lot. It's just so clean. It still has a certain something to it. That Indian doesn't have. Even though this is good Indian rosewood. This is really nice Indian rosewood, actually. It's very straight grain. Trying to get that color in there. There you go. Trying to get that color in there, and it's pretty bright. It's a bright sounding guitar. That's a decent top tone, you know. I've not had an LSV on... Since I got a good microphone, since I got a good camera. I had a lot of them for a while, you know, when they first came out. I worked on quite a few of them, but this is the first one I've had for quite a while, you know. And here's the thing about this. This is, golly, 621. Wow. I mean, we're up into what, the 12 or 13 now. I mean, we're up into the 1,300,000 serial numbers, maybe higher than that. This thing must be 99, something around in there. For as old as this guitar is, the binding's untight. There's no loose binding anywhere. I can barely feel that. Whatever new glue or technique Martin's using now, they're really having some issues with binding coming off. I mean, my personal authentic, you know, I've had three personal authentics. Binding came loose on all of them. It's a very common problem right here at the waist. The hypothesis is the glue is not strong enough now because they trying to meet new and modern environmental standards, because good glue is aggressive stuff, a lot of solvents. I don't blame them. You know, you're in a factory. Working on the HVAC of this commercial building that I manage in Los Alamos has taught me a lot about the differences between your personal building and a commercial building. And the same sort of thing when you're doing a factory to the level that Martin's doing. Collings doesn't do it at that level. Nobody does it at the level that Martin does it. And when you get up into that level, there are things that are different. So I don't blame them, you know. I'm just saying, 1999 or whatever this guitar is, and binding's still tight. That's, you know, that's nice. LSV.